I would guess that if you're interested in Yiquan, then at some point you will have seen someone doing Jianwu, i.e. martial dance, and you will have seen this kind of posture. And this is known as carrying water with a yoke. And this rather romantic AI generated image is the kind of thing we're talking about. And you've probably seen something like Shaolin monks carrying water like this, or seen it in a movie or something. And that's yoke. The yoke is the thing that goes over your shoulders, and that's yoke, Y-O-K-E, not like an egg yolk. And I know older people are thinking, well, that doesn't need explaining, but I'm telling you, as a university lecturer, the things that young people don't know, it's like it's just from another dimension or something. So carrying water with a yoke. And although I'm not particularly doing it on that clip that I just showed, it usually involves lifting your leg up a little bit more. So it's very much in the shape of what we would these days call a calf kick. And that, of course, is very popular in MMA these days. Usually in MMA, it's very attritional, so you just do it as many times as you can until your opponent can't take it anymore. Whereas in Yiquan, usually, traditionally anyway, the idea is that it's a little bit more about kicking your opponent's leg from under them, so kicking the strongest part of their body, as Wang Shanjai talks about, as we talked about in a previous video, kicking the strongest part of their body, taking away that structure supporting strut and just unbalancing them. And just like everything in Yiquan, be careful, don't kick too far past the centre line, otherwise you'll show your back. And also be careful anyway, because it's so easy just to drop someone with this. And if you're training on a hard floor, so when we're doing it, we're usually really careful. You might do it a little bit, but you don't put it in full power because they will slam into the ground. That's no good on a hard floor like this. So you can see we're just touching, just showing that it could be put in like there. And again, it speaks to this thing about, well, what is sparring for, that we'll look at another time. It's not just about getting punched in the head. It's about checking all your timing and stuff like that. So these Yiquan people who say, don't spar, well, they don't spar, do they? And that's why they can't do stuff like this. So a lot of this is all about just timing, distance, and just developing that kind of what we call these days fight IQ, for thinking about timing and distance and being able to just on the fly see the target, go for the target, survive. Okay, so let's look at some of the details. You can see when I'm doing it sparring, it sometimes goes wrong, but one of the differences with a calf kick is you don't need to swing this in, so we keep to this rule of hitting to the centre line. The necessary power is going to come from short, sharp movement, i.e. farley. We don't need the same kind of power that you need for bruising a leg. Don't try and do it full power, you don't need to. Remember though that in Yiquan we try not to rely on the solidity of the target to stop the strike. We try and stop it at the lock point that doesn't usually go past the centre line, and to do that we have to rely on using either contraction or expansion, which is to say some form of open or close. And there's a big difference, for example, with something like a stomp kick, which we'll look at another time, where you use the floor to stop your force, and the water carrier's kick, where you're going to be in mid-air at the hit point, so you're going to have to somehow control that. And to do that, in this case, we're going to use close, i.e. contraction, and we're going to use oppositional force, so the left leg's going to move in, and the right shoulder's also going to move towards the leg, so the whole body's going to fold in the middle. And as we're on one leg, we're double weighted, so we're quite unbalanced, so we have to train it not to go past the centre line and to be fast. And the temptation will be to lean too far backwards. I mean, it takes you a little bit back anyway, but we try and counter that with the oppositional force with the shoulder, so just keep that all in check. Next, think about the shape of the leg. It's got to be bent at all the joints, so we're using bow. And if you're doing this against something like a punch bag, you've got to do it light at first. You've got to get the right feeling, or you can really injure yourself. So the correct shape of the leg, using this concept of bow, like embrace, but with the leg in this case, is absolutely essential. And you can also see here that the leg turns in, it kind of flicks in, so that's overdetermined because it helps the structure of the leg. It makes it less prone to injury because it's on the right angle then, but it also adds that little bit of farley and that little bit of flick. And that's what you need, just a fast movement to kick the leg from under them. And then next, something a little bit higher level that you won't necessarily get at first. To use the contraction effectively, your root and the way that you set the posture has to just move in, so your feet actually come closer together. So you can see here the rear foot is moving in, And that also allows you to set the posture a little bit harder, even though it's a really small movement. And that also adds just that little bit of extra solidity to the posture, as we've learned about before. And as well as everything else, it helps to balance the posture. As we looked at in the beginner series, it pulls the leg a little bit more directly under the body, and that helps you to just balance in the moment. Also creates a better arc for the legs to transmit the force, i.e. the shape of both legs make together, they kind of arc so that they can just support the strike when it hits the target. And that's a good bit of mud flying off there. Next we add in the push step, and for the push step the foot needs to come in a little bit. So it needs to come in behind the other foot, so it's not normally in line in your basic stance. So it's got to come in behind, and this timing here is just a basic 1-2. And the way this works is, depending on your level, if it's like a clear 1-2, then you have to set the posture slightly again when you actually do the kick. So you step, and then when you do the kick, the heel lifts and just hits back into the floor a little bit. But if you can get it so that the timing is just 1, so that you kind of skip into it, then the point where the rear foot hits the floor with the step is the set. So it's all about this idea of compounding movements as you get higher levels, you cultivate to a higher level. So it can be step and then set again as you do the kick, or the step itself can be the set if you get the kick and the step compounded fast enough into one movement. And you know, people are always saying that you don't need theory, that you'll just get this naturally, that no one needs to tell you this, but I mean, yeah, but I mean, they can't do it anyway, so how would they know? But the thing is, yeah, okay, you can get it naturally, but it saves a hell of a lot of time if someone can just explain how it's done. It saves a lot of mental anguish, in fact, if someone can just do it and you can see them do it. I mean, that's almost a miracle these days. Anyway, here you can really see that the timing is 1-2. The kick is not compounded with the step, it's just two separate movements close together. Look carefully and you can see that the rear foot sets again after the step. 1, see just the heel hit down again. That tells you that it's not a compounded movement, it's two separate movements. For the rear leg step in, the step through counts as 1 beat, so it has a count of 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. And again, watch again. 1, 2, 3. So the moment you move counts as 1 beat. 1, 2, 3. Doesn't have to stay like that, but just helps you learn it. And then when you speed it up, it's 1, 2, 3. Look. 1, 2, 3. Feeling the rhythm aids your intuitive development, but it also helps you feel intuitively how you can compress it by just making 2 beats into 1, but we're not doing that yet. Next we want to think about how the triangle step comes through. We've looked at that a little bit before, but this time because of the nature of the kick we've got to think about how the leg comes through. It's got to keep that crooked posture and it should come through like a golf club swinging through, not round like a baseball bat swinging round. So it shouldn't feel like you're opening your legs. Remember, it's close. And we've talked before about how the triangle step doesn't necessarily have to come in this perfect arc shape when you move fast, and usually it doesn't anyway, but that second leg, the kicking leg, has to come through, not round. And it also has to maintain the correct shape, that kind of structured bow, that sense of it being crooked. But if you try and bring it round like you're kicking a football, it makes your posture really wide and really awkward. So we've got to get it nice and tight and through, like passing a ball rather than free kicking it down the field. And then you just need to time the oppositional force, so you can see the body twisting. That's using close or contraction, explosive close. Next, shuffle step, shifting back, so we want to move the whole body back on a count of 1, so it's not really a push step retreating, it's just shuffle 1, 2. So if you look closely, you see the lead foot does move first, but then it's all just timed 1 on the landing. 1, 1, 2.